Welcome to Cultivated Live for Friday, July 12th. Whew, that happened quick, all the way through July almost. No, halfway through. I'm Jay Rosenthal. Oh, hold on. I'm streaming to myself and I confused myself. I'm Jay Rosenthal. I am the co-founder of Cultivated Media and the host of this program, Cultivated Live. Since we launched, our goal at Cultivated has been to be cannabis industry first, providing you with the most important, insightful, useful, and timely information. We do it every day through our daily newsletter, Cultivated Daily, which you can find at cultivated.news. We do this daily live stream, which is Cultivated Live. We stream this through LinkedIn, so follow us there. We stream it through YouTube. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. We also deliver this through, today we're delivering it through my Twitter/X channel. So hello, if you're there, please give me a follow. Although I'm not begging for that. I'd rather have you follow us on YouTube and LinkedIn. And I try to stay off of Twitter as much as possible. Today, I am joined by my friend and our new partner here at Cultivated Media, LJ Dawson. She is the editor-in-chief of the Outlaw Report. LJ, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me again, Jay. Excited to be back.
I'm excited to have you. And folks who read our 2 newsletters this week saw something I think interesting and super fun for us, is that we are now partners. And each week we will host in our newsletter what you are writing in the Outlaw Report, and you will host some things that we are writing on Cultivated daily. So I really like this partnership because I think even this week, sort of the Maryland market, which is one of the markets you covered, came out and said that they were $1 billion market in the first year, which is exciting. But certainly Maryland, DC, and Virginia, or DMV, as I know you like to call it, is a market that everybody in the industry is super curious about. So I'm super excited about the partnership. Glad to have you here today and hope that we can provide great information to our respective audiences.
Absolutely. We're really excited too, Jay. You guys do a great daily newsletter, great summary of the federal news or the other national news that is happening, great breakdowns of everything that's going on, including what's going on at the Supreme Court, how that affects cannabis and how that affects rescheduling. And so we're really excited to be able to offer both of best worlds, a microcosm of the DMV here that you guys are showing your audience, and we're able to take your guys' great information, great writing, and show it to our audience as well.
And you've been doing it for some time, and the Outlaw Report is super well known, read by everybody who's anybody in the DMV. See, I'm going to start calling it that.
You're doing great.
Give us a little bit of background about the Outlaw Report, which I'm not even sure I know sort of the full background. Give us a little bit of the background.
Yeah, so we were founded shortly after I-71 was passed, which a really quick reminder for everyone that is not from the DC area. I-71 was a constitutional amendment that actually allowed gifting or adult gifting in the DC area. So I could gift Jay up to 2 ounces of cannabis.
Thank you, by the way.
You're welcome. I would be doing interstate, so I can't send it to Canada.
Well, when I'm in DC. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. If Jay was in DC, very key, I can gift whoever 2 ounces of cannabis as long as they're giving me no monetary gain, no money is exchanged, right? And so people started gifting, Jay would pay $200 for a t-shirt and get a gift of an ounce of cannabis on the side, right? So that was passed back in 2014, 2015. Don't quote me. It was one of those years. And after that, the Outlaw came around shortly after. That was also around when our medical market launched and really got going. And we've been reporting on the DC, Virginia, and Maryland news since then. We took a little bit of a slowdown and break back in 2021, and we're now back and we're really excited. We're expanding. We recently launched a membership. So we're actually offering our subscribers, the opportunity to support independent journalism, which is so important, especially in an industry like this where rumors and hearsay and the telephone game is extreme. We'll put it that way. Don't believe everything you read on an Instagram meme account. I just want to put that out there. Go find reputable journalism. And we offer everyone in our area independent, uncensored, verified, fact-based journalism on what is going on regulation-wise, what is going on enforcement-wise, and what's just going on culturally in this area. And so we actually just launched a membership where we're offering people the chance to support us for $10 a month, but we're also giving them, if they subscribe, access to data that we have pulled together, maps that are explaining the licensing process, where everyone's at. So we're really excited to offer those more industry insight options for people that support us. But we're keeping all our news free, as it should be. All of it is publicly accessible. So we never want to paywall information that needs to be public and stories that impact cannabis users, our community, our business, and our legislature and enforcement people, because all of them read the Outlaw. I've been told. So we have a pretty direct line to our community, which is great.
I know you do, and all of that is true. And I think regulators and those in government that follow the industry certainly read the Outlaw Report. We know they read what we're writing Cultivated, because they have, just like everybody in the industry, there's so much happening. It's helpful to keep up. But I will say, very few publications in the cannabis industry cover markets as closely as you, or as diverse as I would say DC, Maryland, and Virginia are in the stages that they are in. I mean, you were describing the cannabis history of DC with I-71, then a medical market, and now we're going to talk about what's happening now in DC. But Maryland, which has now had adult use for just over a year, but had a very big medical market, and now is now $1 billion market, we learned this week. And then Virginia, which seems to always be on the cusp of they do pass legalization, then the governor doesn't sign it. But it seems to be these markets are poised together. They're poised together to be really big, certainly, and they also impact one another because they are also close together because it's such a confined space in the DMV. And certainly what happens in DC affects the Maryland market. The Maryland market affects the DC market. Those two together have to impact what Virginia is thinking. And certainly even further, like Delaware this week said they're going to go, their legal stuff is going to happen in 2025. So it is like the microcosm of what's happening on the national scale, but happening really tightly confined space around DC.
Totally. I mean, you see in the West markets impacting each other, right? So California, Oregon, but markets like Colorado are pretty isolated, right? So there's a lot of space. So even if there's some underground, off the books stuff going on, it's going to be more difficult, right? Like for people to just reach each other, product to reach other people. Whereas in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, I can drive pretty much probably an hour and be in some of the biggest population centers of the DMV. And so we see a lot of cannabis tourism here, right? So you see a ton of Maryland, Virginia patients coming into DC to shop at our legal medical dispensaries, and I'm sure even more to shop at our gifting dispensaries. And when Maryland actually legalized adult use a year ago, we saw that really impact economically our DC medical market, because we have a ton of patients for us. A ton of patients for us is under 1,000, but that's a lot in a medical market, which is DC, which only serves 11,000 patients a month. So we saw that really impact our sales actually, and that's something we're trying to figure out. Some of the top places that patients are coming to DC from are Maryland, Virginia, and actually North Carolina. So it's just close. A lot of the things that are going on the East Coast, even in New York, are close. And we have businesses that have operations in New York and DC. And that's, again, not that far away compared to somewhere where you're talking about Los Angeles and Portland. So
Right. Nobody driving from Los Angeles to Portland to buy weed, but people do that, certainly on the East Coast, especially, in DC's got a real sort of cannabis culture that is cool and hip and deep and broad. And it is compelling. And can I just shift to sort of more newsy and topical stuff that you wrote about this week, which is something happening in DC. I'd love for you to explain what is happening. I guess is it a crackdown on the I-71 dispensaries, or is it or a crackdown on other things happening?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair term for it. We are seeing a crackdown on I-71. And I do want to start with New York really quickly. So obviously, New York, we've seen a huge crackdown on unlicensed dispensaries there. I think close to 200. It's probably more now, but close to 200 about a week ago had gotten padlocked, actually physically locked and shut by a team. And this is in New York City, right? And they actually have a task force that is going out and specifically doing that. That is also currently being challenged legally, as all this stuff I'm sure will, but that is what they're doing. In New York, they finally got fed up. The market the legal market there was doing not great, and that's adult use and medical.
Mhm.
And it wasn't doing good. And so there was a ton of pressure that like, we have to shut these unlicensed stores down. Like, they are obviously taking a ton of business. It's debatable whether that business will immediately transfer to an adult use market. We don't know. But they pushed and pushed and pushed, and we're like, we have to do this. Everyone knows the licensing slowdowns that were going down. So it was kind of a do or die moment, I think, for the New York authorities. And they were like, we got to do something. And so they're now padlocking stores, and it's working. If working for you is the legal market doing better, it's working, right? It's finally having an impact. And so in DC, we had a plethora of I-71 gifting shops that were not legal. They weren't medical. We only have a medical market here in DC. The feds have not allowed us to set up an adult use market, unfortunately.
We'll dive into that maybe next week. Yeah,
exactly. That's another thing. But yeah, so we have a ton of gifting stores, and some of them pay taxes and actually function on, like, if they're selling t-shirts and gifting cannabis products, they might pay taxes on all of that retail, but it's a retail business. And so recently, in the last year, as we've expanded our medical market, a law was passed in 2022. We've actually seen the council do something unique across the entire nation, which is actually extend an olive branch to unlicensed operators. And there was 3 months at the beginning of retail licenses being available, before social equity, before standard, where our legislature and our government said, we want you to come to the legal market, the legal medical market. And here is 90 days specifically for you guys to apply and have first dibs on licenses. But you have to prove that you are doing a legal business. It's a legal business, right? So you have to prove that you were actually paying taxes on t-shirts and gifting cannabis. And that is something you have to show tax returns when you submit your application. And so they were given that period, and we had less than 100 shops apply, which might sound a lot for those of you who think of DC as a small city. But we have had hundreds of gifting shops operating at one point. So it's a very small percentage of our market, of our potential whole market. And so after that happened, through this last 8 months now, 6 months, we are now seeing those ones that applied working through licensing to get open as legal medical dispensaries, where they have to pay taxes, they have to submit metrics, they have to get inspections. I mean, everything that goes into a legal licensed cannabis operation, they have to do, right? And the ones that did it are going through that process. They're actually being given a little bit of a white flag to continue gifting while they go through the process, which is very interesting. And those that didn't have been operating until March. And in March, we started seeing the government say, time's up, you didn't operate in good faith. And so they started giving out warnings. And these warnings were just kind of a pat on the slap on the wrist, right? They were saying, you should not be doing this, but it was the first of a process of legal action to say, you guys can't keep gifting. This is not something the government's going to turn a blind eye to anymore. MPD, our police department, our regulatory agency for cannabis, they were like, time's up. They got more laws passed to give them more authority to go after these shops, because many of those shops got those warnings and were like, whatever. These are people who are already operating in a gray space. So you send them a letter and they're like, come at me with more. And I think we saw that in New York. Until they started padlocking the stores, no one was going to stop doing what they were doing. DC had a culture of pop-ups back in the early days of I-71 and gifting, and they were getting raided. And this was just part of the culture. You would get raided. Some people would get arrested, no papered. Maybe the cops kept your money and your products, but you just kind of rinsed and repeat. It's many of the people who've been in the cannabis industry before legalization happened. This is normal. This is a normal level of risk for them. So it didn't work. People were still operating. Right around where I live, there was tons of people. I would see I'm reporting. I'm like, I know you got a warning, and they said there were amphetamines in your cannabis, and here you are. You're still open, right? So recently, they tried to do the next step of enforcement, which was actually sending out cease and desist. And this allows our regulatory agency to go to these stores that they have given warnings to previously and say, you didn't listen. Now we're sending you a cease and desist, and we're going to refer you to other law enforcement agencies. And now the games are over, right? I do want to make a really quick note that even though they're saying they're referring to other law enforcement agencies, that doesn't necessarily mean that these other law enforcement agencies have not already been watching what has been happening, right? DC, most of our cannabis, I would say 90% of our cannabis comes in from out of state or out of district, right? We are small. That's any gray market is getting their cannabis from Oklahoma, Colorado, California, and Oregon. That's just the way it is in the United States. So anyways, who knows what, people have been watching going on with these shops. Some of them are really big. Some of them have multiple shops across the country that are gifting or operating in the gray market, and they have a known brand. So these cease and desist went out just last week, and they were the first 4 that have gone out yet. We saw, I think 4 more that was just sent out this past week. And these shops are already saying they're going to fight them. And it's unclear what the legal results of that are going to be. It's pretty clear that most of them have been operating outside of the white olive branch that the government kind of showed. And they're saying though that they're not going to stop operating. Some of them have shut, some of them have closed, but I would say it's like a 50-50, right? Some of them are still operating and going full force, even though they received this cease and desist letter. And so there is the power of our regulatory agency to start padlocking these stores, but they haven't. And they've been really clear that these businesses still have legal recourse, that they still are allowed to say that the cease and desist was wrong, that they can go through our board of our regulatory agency and refute what happened. It's not clear how that's going to work, right? Because it's pretty clear they've been operating outside of what should be going on. But they're going to try. And again, the longer they push things, the longer they say that, they're going into court or they're going to, take it to the board, the longer that a lot of them are going to keep operating. And at the end of the day, your moral opinion on whether these gifting stores are right or wrong, who knows, right? That's not my decision. But I will tell you that the market, our medical market in DC is really hurting right now. And the biggest reason is that there's so many other gifting spots that these stores, that me as a customer, if I walk into a medical dispensary, I can walk literally out the door and walk 200 feet sometimes to go to another store. So if the goal is to have a successful medical market, DC has to continue to get really serious about how it's going to enforce on these unlicensed operators, much like New York did. And New York waited a long time, right? It waited years to start doing something. And there's tons of people that left the industry that had tried to get into the legal market. So that's a short summary.
That's a good summary. That's a really good summary. I also think and just to reiterate, like even the gifting in DC, and it is relatively large. I mean, I don't think there's a way to quantify sort of how many dollars, how many people, but like it actually has an impact in Maryland's market and what patients are, and the success of the patient-focused care as well. So it is interesting to hear about, which is why we like this partnership, because it gives us a really deep view into what is happening, the rationale behind it, the history behind it, which is all you and the Outlaw Report, LJ. So this is great. It's really great.
No, and it has a national implication as well, right? So nowhere else in the nation has offered technically illegal operators under the jurisdiction's rules and laws to come into the market.
Directly, for sure.
Right, exactly. And I say illegal with quotations because technically if they're gifting, it was legal. It gets complicated, right? Yeah. They acknowledged that and they said, okay, we want you to come in. But now we're looking at the case where it's like, they said they will welcome you in. And now the government has to uphold its side of the bargain with helping ensure that the market is protected from unlicensed operators. And that's where we're starting to get into some chunky terrain, some rough terrain. So
yeah, I also the difference between sort of how Maryland operates, which seems like so by the books, you know what I mean? Like it's like they had a medical market. It was big. There were lots of patients. They allowed those operators to welcome in adult use from the get-go. And now there's other licensing happening, but which seems very clean and clear in how it rolled out. And DC, its neighbor is DC, right? Like it's very DC. Yeah.
Yeah, no. And I think we talk sometimes about Maryland as like MSO, multi-state operator country, which is unfortunate in a lot of ways, right? Because we want small growers, we want small businesses to be able to successfully make a living and transition into this legal market, because that's who the industry was built off the backs of, right? No MSOs, very few MSOs can say, they were trapping back in the 2000s, and that's not where this community and this industry grew from. And so one thing is, DC is very, very focused on that. We have a lot of small independent businesses. We actually just had one of the MSOs, Columbia Care, which has a dispensary here. They actually just pulled out of DC. And it's not Columbia Care, it's the cannabis company. But either way, they just actually closed a dispensary in DC and pulled out. So it's really the land of like independent, gritty, like people trying to make it work. It's an entrepreneurial city in general. And so it's definitely a place to watch out, because it's where a lot of things start, a lot of trends start. And it's also where, if you're looking for like independent, small growers, cultivators, and retail and dispensaries, like this is what you want to look for. This is the market that is really having that at the forefront versus some of our bigger MSO like markets.
Yes, and we look forward to keeping a very close eye through you and the team at the Outlaw Report. Jay, I really want to thank you for making time today. Thank you for the partnership. Thank you for the insight. And we will get around to talking about how Congress influences what happens in DC too, certainly on cannabis and even on other stuff too. But thank you so much for your time today. We look forward to seeing you next week and following weeks.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having us, Jay. Appreciate you.
We appreciate you. Give me 1 sec. Let me read us out. That is it for today's Cultivated Live. We encourage you to subscribe to our daily newsletter at cultivated.news, and also subscribe to the Outlaw Report and give them a membership as well, because that's important work. Follow us on LinkedIn, smash the subscribe button on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter if you're watching this on Twitter. Next week will be special programming because I will be on a summer cannabis road trip. I'll describe all of that on Monday through New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. And we'll be back here 10 a.m. Eastern on Monday on LinkedIn, YouTube, and my Twitter handle. And buy cannabis at your local dispensary, because it's the middle of summer and it's Friday, and dispensaries are fun on Friday, if not a little crowded. LJ, thanks again. We'll see you next week.